So Ted Cruz has introduced a bill that I believe would be a constitutional amendment that would impose term limits on members of Congress, both the Senate and the House. And this is an issue where I am in favor of term limits, but honestly, I could be swayed. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure where, if term limits really would work. They sound like a good idea, but I'm not entirely sure how they'd work in practice. So I would say I'm in favor of it for a few reasons, and I'll give those in a second. And then I want to go through an article that lists reasons against it, just to kind of play devil's advocate and go through, I guess, is it good or is it bad? But I'm generally in favor of term limits because you figure it's more of a bipartisan thing. I find it very interesting that generally it's not something that one party supports and the other opposes. It's something that most people oppose, or most members of Congress oppose, which I guess I'm not very confident that it would pass, considering most of these people, like, their jobs are on the line here if they support it. But what I find interesting is that you'd see a lot of, like, the more ideological candidates seem to support this, whereas the career politician people, unsurprisingly, are opposing it. So you see, like, people like Rand Paul have been in favor of it. A lot of, like, the more libertarian-leaning right-wing Republicans have been in favor of it. And then you see people, I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's very left-wing, has been in favor of it. So stuff like that generally gives me a good idea that things would be better because you would have more ideology-based people in Congress. And again, like, that could be good or bad depending on which ideology. I'm not sure. But I think it would be good all across the board to get more people that are more ideological than people that are there just to get a paycheck. Like, you would immediately filter out all the people that are looking to do this as a business, that see this as a career rather than actually to affect change. And I see that as a good thing. Like, even if we were going to get more Ocasio-Cortez-like people, or more Bernie Sanders is a career politician, but even if we were to get more, like, far left-wing candidates, we would also get, I think, a lot more ideological, like, libertarian-type people that, again, people that are doing it to change the system, not because they want a career, something like that. I think it'll filter out all those people. On top of that, I think it's generally a good idea because expertise does not mean that much. Like, that's something that the article addresses, but actually I'll reference that later in the article when I talk about what they do there. But that's generally why I'm for it. In that, think about the presidency, for example, that we have now imposed term limits on the presidency. That used to not be the case. FDR had 4 terms, and I would actually argue FDR was one of our worst presidents. But I think that would be a good thing. It's a good thing that we've all kind of agreed that, yeah, after 2 terms, that's enough for a president. That's something we can all get behind, and I think that would be the same way for Congress. Another thing is incumbency. That's another one that I think would be a good idea. It seems a lot of people generally vote for name recognition. They're like, yeah, I like my congressman, whatever, so they vote for him. And I think that would get rid of those people, the people that vote based on name recognition, the people that vote for their current congressman because they seem like things have been going good. I think that would be a good idea, to get rid of those voters that aren't voting based on policy, that are voting just because of the incumbent. Of course, there's not much you can do about people that just vote for the D or the R or whatever, the party. But I think it would get rid of the more uninformed voters that are voting entirely based on name recognition. But we'll go through the article here. So these are reasons, again, against term limits that the article is going through. One, it says take power away from the voters. Obviously, if voters did not like their candidates, they wouldn't vote for them. By supporting or by imposing term limits, you're essentially taking away the power from the voters to be able to continue voting for a politician that they actually do like. And I mean, I understand that perspective. There are people like Rand Paul that I can't vote for him because I'm not in Kentucky. Same with Thomas Massie. I'm also not in Kentucky's district, in that Kentucky district, so I can't vote for either of them. But I like that they're constantly being reelected. I like those people, and I want them to stay in office. And I fully acknowledge that under term limits, they would go away. But honestly, when it comes to that, it's like take power away from the voters. I don't have much reliance on the voters. That's what I'm worried about. It's like I want as much decentralized power as possible. I don't want centralized power like that. I want the people to have as much of a say as possible. But at the same time, I have to understand that people are not well informed, that people are not reliable as of what's right or what's good. And in that sense, I really have to, this is something I'm really struggling with, that is it necessary? Like, I'm not for direct democracy. Would it be better than our current system? I don't know, maybe. I don't think it's the ideal system, though. But when it comes to taking power away from voters, I mean, we've done that with the presidency. I think you've seen how polarized voters can be. You can see how, when it comes to politicians, people toss out their political principles and start voting purely on policy. And I think, in fact, now that I'm thinking about this more, or when I was thinking about this more earlier, I'm starting to realize that it might make people look at the policies more, because when people look at politicians, they assess the politician based on a few policy positions, and then they kind of go hardcore with it. Where I think kind of hitting that reset button every so often would do better to really make people constantly look at new people and evaluate them based on policy, rather than in a more like dogmatic way of, oh, this person supports it, therefore I support it, kind of thing. Second, decreased congressional capacity. I think this one was actually related to number 3 as well. Yeah, 2 and 3 is basically expertise. Like, obviously, it takes expertise to write bills. It takes expertise to know how Congress works. Like, it is a job. It is a profession. It's something that you can get better at over time. To these things, I will both say that doesn't really matter that much. It's not like congressmen are writing bills. It's the congressmen are not outsourcing that, but congressmen are having other people write bills. They're not the ones writing the 10,000-page bills. They're also not the ones reading the 10,000-page bills. And I think that really that's not much of a benefit for people to have like policy expertise. That's what you outsource. That's what you hire people to do. That's what you say, okay, you're an expert in your field. Okay, write this bill. This is what I want the bill to say. It's not the congressmen that are writing bills. It's the congressmen that are saying, this is what I want. This is what the kind of bill I want. Now they're going to have someone write it for them. And obviously, like, I get that. Is it lobby? Like, who's exactly writing those bills is an issue. But I don't think the policy, I don't think necessarily that Congress should be the one. Like, we know the Congress isn't writing bills. We know that they're not the ones that are actually writing the bills. They're the ones that are outsourcing it. So in that sense, it's like, yeah, it's Congress's job more to be informed and have it like influence their opinion. As much as I think like facts matter more than opinion, Congress's job is not to write the bills. It's to tell people to write the bills. Essentially, that's something they outsource. So I don't think that would be much of a negative. Automatically kick out effective lawmakers. Sure, I think like Rand Paul, I think is good. Justin Mash, I think is good. Massey, I think is good. I don't know too much about Mark Meadows, but he seems good too. You would kick out a lot of good people in Congress. Sure, you would kick out a lot of good people that are good at their job, that know what they're doing. But I also think that you would kick out a lot of corrupt people as well. You would kick out a lot of career politicians. And it's much harder. It's much harder to buy and sell congressmen when they can't get reelected, because that's what they're focused on. They're focused on getting reelected that next term. And I think when you, there's a term for this that I can't remember, but there's something that refers to the president's, the last like section of the president being in office, where they really don't care. Like, if they're not going to be reelected, they don't care too much about making sure doing what the voters want. They care more about, or not doing what the voters want, but doing what's politically popular. And they care more about actually getting stuff done, doing what they want. And there are all kinds of issues. Like, my issue in not trusting the voters, there are all kinds of issues out there where the voters are wrong. I will say that the voters are wrong. When it comes to like Social Security and Medicare, for example, it is political suicide to address that problem. It is political suicide to address the problem with the national debt. And yet those things need to be addressed in ways that will not make people happy. But those need to be done. And I think that like that's what you need. You need more people that aren't going to be influenced by, oh, what is going to get me elected next term. I think it would be much better if people were more loosely constrained by that and advocated for what they want. And we can always see that later. Like, if someone is really appreciated, they can always say, hey, I endorse this candidate. Like, if someone's really respected by their voters, they can say, I endorse this dude as the next candidate. Like, they can pass on that influence like that. It says number 5, do little to minimize corruptive behavior or slow the revolving door. That's the thing that I haven't read the studies. I glanced at a few of them. This is where I'm most hung up on, is will this actually work? Will this actually be effective at stopping corruption? And will this really, like, again, will this stop lobbying? Not really. Will this, I don't know. That's the thing. That's where I'm really hung up on, and I don't have a good answer for this. So if you do have a good answer, like, let me know what you think in the comment section. And I'm talking specifically about the United States. I know I have lots of subscribers that are outside the U.S., so it's like, hey, what about your own country? Like, do you have this in your own country? Does it work? Like, let me know. Or would you support this in your own country? Does this work just for the U.S.? This is what I'm interested in seeing, because this is like, we don't have term limits, so I can't see how this would work if enforced. I don't know if this would stop corruption, but I am hopeful. I'm optimistic. For the reasons I listed in the first few minutes of this video, I think they would work for that. I think it would stop corruption for those reasons, but at the same time, I'm very hesitant on whether or not this would work. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments section. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and thanks for watching.